Good morning, and possibly it's nighttime when you are, but my name is Dr. Kentress Davison, and I wanted to do this presentation to show those who were wanting to bring clinical research opportunities to the youth, presentation that I conducted at my local high school. So in April, actually, even though I just made the post on LinkedIn earlier this week, I had the opportunity to visit A.H. Parker High School in Birmingham, Alabama. It is the oldest African American high school established in 1902. Health professions teacher, Miss Leonard class, and I had the opportunity to speak to them about clinical research. I myself got into clinical research by chance, trying to navigate into medical school, and I overheard that the director over admissions was interested in people who had a research background. And so I thought if I got into clinical research, it would boost my resume when I decided to apply for medical school. And so I started in 2011, which was 3 years after I graduated with my bachelor's degree, because it took a long time to get into research. Um, I went into diabetes and endocrinology research, and I did that for nearly 10 years before I transitioned into the monitor's role. So, what I did as a presentation to the class is I first I gave them a little overview about myself. So, if you present to a high school or a college or a nursing school, you want to give just a background about yourself, how you got into research, your education avenues, and your career avenues. Then you want to do a brief introduction of what is clinical research, and then provide them with some clinical research opportunities, and then some final take tips and takeaways. So that was the agenda. Of course, you can modify this to the audience that you have. So again, I presented my education, bachelor's in biology, a master's in clinical research administration, and a doctorate in public health. I also was a certified medical assistant, and I kind of drive this because a lot of people think they can't get into nursing unless they are a doctor or a nurse. But there are a lot of opportunities for certified medical assistants, patient care techs, phlebotomists, regulatory staff. So there are other avenues in clinical research that doesn't necessarily require you to have a license. And then my career started, I list my career journey. So that just gives them a background of saying, it's not, you don't have to go one way. I don't have to go straight to college, straight to nursing school, and then I can get into research, or straight to college, um, MD schools, because believe it or not, there are a lot of medical doctors that may come from different countries in the United States and decide that they don't want to go back through the residency program or a program to allow their license to be active in a different country, and they become study coordinators and they become CRAs. I did not know that until I applied for the CRA position in 2021 and got my job, how common it is for medical doctors in other countries to be study coordinators or to be clinical research associates. So that again, it provides some insight of the diversity of education background of various people in clinical research. Okay, so this is just a general definition of clinical research. As you present to the class or your audience, you want to give them a general background or definition about clinical research. There is a stigma. I'm from the South of in the United States, and so there is a stigma with clinical research as it relates to African Americans. In the state that I am, we have um, a daunting horror that's called the Tuskegee experiment that we well, I myself, of course, didn't experience, but it was from 1932 to 1972, a 40-year clinical trial that involved 600 African American men with syphilis, and the treatment was readily available, but was withheld for quote unquote clinical research purposes. And these individuals were not given the full details of the clinical trial. The informed consent process did not provide them with the potential risks on the outcomes, and they participated in this clinical research and continued to suffer from syphilis, and not only themselves, but a lot of them uh, gave the sexual transmitted disease to their spouses or their significant others, and the population of syphilis in that community grew. And so some people are very distrustful when it comes to clinical research, but on one hand, they don't understand that, most of their medications or the treatments that they have access to when they go into a hospital or a clinic have derived from clinical research. So you want to give them a definition of what clinical research is. So here we have clinical research as a branch of medical research that involves human participants to study the efficacy, safety, and mechanisms of new treatment, therapies, and diagnostic tools. It aims to improve human health by developing and evaluating interventions to prevent, diagnose, and treat diseases. So another thing we can also point out is not all clinical research involves taking medication. Some clinical research can involve a new diet, exercise regimen, um, how to provide the informed consent process if written is better than electronic. All these things can derive from clinical research. You also have surveys and um, and focus groups. So not all clinical research involves participants taking a medication or having to deal with the implementation of a device. So you want to stress that so people can understand that there is diversity within what type of clinical research that they can be a part of. And so then we want to talk about those definitions. What is efficacy? We let them know the definitions of them and the importance of safety, the mechanisms of new treatments, therapies, and diagnostic tools. So we know efficacy is basically proving that the device or investigation or product that they're trying to investigate proves to do what it says it's going to do. So this is why we conduct clinical trials, just to prove that it works, basically. Then we talk about safety. Something might work on one hand, but cause too many side effects or even deaths that'll be too detrimental to the population. So we also test for the safety of that investigational product. Mechanisms of treatment. So we compare different treatments. A lot of times in clinical research, we're comparing medications that's already on the market. Which one will be better than the other? Can we discontinue this drug, or can this drug be the first line of defense for this indication versus this indication? So we want to explain to them what it means by mechanisms of new treatment, different therapies. We know that the majority of clinical research is cancer research, and we know that there have been several different therapies that have been developed since the original chemotherapy and radiation and surgery. We have stem cell treatment. We have targeted cell treatment. We have monoclonal treatment. So there has been several new treatments that have derived from trying to eradicate cancer. And then diagnostic tools. We know we have our MRIs, our CTs, our X-rays, and these different tools are continuously being improved with technology. Safety mechanisms being put into place to help with the what we call signal events or things that shouldn't happen in the hospital as it relates to different medical tools, so or diagnostic tools. So we run clinical research to improve on these different concepts. And then the again a basic concept, the different phases. So that it introduced to them the different phases, how we have the preclinical, which is the phase that's dealing with either just the cells in a specimen or animal testing, that kind of data. Then we go from phase 1 to phase 4. So you want to explain the different phases in clinical research. Phase 1, focus on the safety, includes a secondary investigation of efficacy and mechanisms. We know that this is a small population. It's typically healthy subjects. We have phase 2. It focus on the efficacy becomes more of an important factor. Safety is still a priority. It's a little larger, estimated between like 130 participants. By this time, we're testing people who have the indication in which we're trying to improve. Phase 3, that is your larger scale. It can be 100, 1,000 to 3,000. It can be even 40, 50,000, depending on the trials. And these are typically when you have your global studies. So they're not just in the United States, but they are across. So I will share these slides. So people can modify them as they want to. I just want individuals to keep the last couple of slides that have my social media platforms, so people can potentially watch the videos, further education, subscribe, and that sort of thing. But yes, I will, for people who reach out, I will, and participated, I will provide these slides. Okay, and so the structure of research, we have the sponsor. This is usually the financial backing. This can be an investigator, a PhD or a medical doctor. It can be a pharmaceutical company. It can be a biomed company, but it's typically the financial institution that is backing the clinical research. Then we have the investigator. That is it could be a PhD or it could be a medical doctor, but if it is a PhD and the trial requires medical qualified staff to do various testing, then that PhD person has to have somebody on that delegation log that can do those tasks. But the principal investigator is responsible for how the study is ran at the site. They have to sign what's called the 1572, a document that has an agreement between them and the FDA, essentially saying that they're going to provide oversight of the trial. They're going to train the people who's delegated, make sure they have the proper training and the credentials and stuff like that. Then you have the site staff. It can involve just a study coordinator and a regulatory person, and then it can involve a whole stream of people. So some study coordinators just see the patient and deal with the participants aspect of a clinical trial, and they are designed to have other staff that does the data entry, the query resolution, the drawing of the labs, processing of labs, that sort of thing. And then some organization like where I came from, the study coordinator is responsible for all of it. So it just depends on how the site is designed. Then you have your vendors. These are the people who offer uh, electronic systems that allow for central monitoring to allow real-time data review. And these are your EDC systems. These are your systems that people may upload EKGs for a central cardiologist to read. These are your people who provide dry ice for your lab specimens, the carriers use to deliver your specimens or provide you with your supplies. So the sponsor has a contract with all these individuals to make sure the study runs smoothly. And then you have your ethics committee. In the United States, it's called the Institutional Review Board, and other places it might be called something else, but there is an ethics committee that reviews the protocol and ensures for patient safety. And now you can get into the careers. So now you've provided them with an overview of clinical research, the phases of different clinical research, the structure of clinical research, and now you can talk about the career opportunities. So I just did some that was local to my state. So I pulled a local hospital's careers and showed the payment arrangements and the degrees that were required. So for research assistant or research coordinator, high school diploma, but a bachelor's degree was preferred for this specific job title. And they were starting off at $20 and they go up to $30. So here's an opportunity. If you have a high school that offers a vocation, a health profession, and all throughout that program, these individuals have already learned how to draw blood, do vital signs, have dealt with some type of clinical setting, they already have somewhat of an experience to do this job right out of high school. Not everybody goes to college. And so they can make anywhere from $20 an hour to 33, well, 30. If they did have their degree, they will become a research coordinator too, and that's 22 to 33 dollars. So not really that much of a difference between that high school diploma and that bachelor's degree, but we do know that having that bachelor's degree will open different opportunities for them. And then here we have the research, clinical research coordinator too, wants a bachelor's degree and 1 year direct related experience or a master's degree. And they range from 48,000 a year to 59,000 a year. And then you have the research nurse coordinator too, there from 60 to 98. So, and the 3 years relative experience or related experience. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have 3 years in clinical research. Relative experience for a nurse could be just their nurse and experience. And so that puts them at 60 to possibly $98,000 a year. So it's some funding in clinical research. And these are just different other jobs, clinical research administration. So people that handle the finance of clinical research. Again, we had I gave the example of a two. They had 47,000 to 77,000. Data people who just deals with the data and query resolution. They had 45 to 73. So these are different, decent salaries. And then you have the regulatory. Some people don't want to deal with the patient aspect of it, but they like the regulatory aspect of clinical research. So right out of high school, you can go from 18 to 30. Regulatory coordinator 2, we had 47,000 to 77,000. A 3 goes up to 89,000. And if you become a manager, you go up to 126. So it again, some comfortable salaries in clinical research. Now we know that some research is derived from grants. And so with the current political climate, some of that grant funding is no longer available. So we do have the potential in clinical research to have downtime and even layoffs. So it's very important that you work with an organization that's proactive when they kind of see funding is being dried up, to either shift you into another department until they can essentially continue to pay you, or something is set into place of what they call the severance package, that you can get a lump sum of money to kind of potentially hold you until you get another career. So hopefully you individuals will get a heads up, but that is not always the case. So I would always suggest a person who has a clinical research career to always try to set some money aside for the events of downtime and their loss of a job. Now, if you're working for an organization that typically just deals with pharmaceutical trials, and they are very good at making sure that you all constantly have a trial in rotation, then it might not be as critical to sit that money to the side. But if you know you work strictly on grant funding, always have in the back of your mind that this can run out any day. So these are typically, if anybody wants to be a CRA, like I said, my role, you have to have that. They prefer you to have a life science bachelor's degree. Not everybody has a degree in some type of life science, but that is the preferred education background. They want you to have organization skills. You need to be detail oriented. You need to be a good communicator, and you need to be willing to travel. This is me on my way to the airport on one of the visits that I was about to conduct. So this particular position involves a lot of traveling. Sometimes you can get on a study and you can strictly do remote visits. And sometimes you get on a study that all your visits have to be on site. A lot of sites are getting away from paper charting, and they're using some of the CTMF systems, but not all sites have reached that level of technology. So travel is just a part of this position. And this is just a job description, so people can read over what it is that we actually do. So I leave that there. But the basis of a clinical research associate is to ensure patient safety and quality data is being done at which site that they're assigned to. That's basically what we go. We go in to make sure the site is following the protocol, that the patient's adverse events and serious adverse events are being documented properly and reported properly. The PI has great oversights. They're reviewing the labs in a timely manner. They're creating progress notes when they do physical exams. Those are the kind of things that the clinical research associate looks for. And we also look for the regulatory side of it. So that investigator site file, people, you'll hear abbreviation ISF, we make sure that they are compliant, always audit ready when it comes to that investigator site file. And so this is typically the education expectation in the range for CRAs. So again, They expect you to have that bachelor's degree, preferred in life science, and then they range anywhere from 85,000 to 105. If you are CRA two, that means you have at least 2 years experience on site. Some places will give you the two title after 1 year, but just depends on the organization that you work for. But typically that range is from 105 to 125, depending on your company. And then your senior CRAs, they start at 125 and they can go up. Now, for individuals who are contract CRAs, because they're not getting benefits and their contract is usually short term, anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, they make more and they negotiate their rate. So it's really no limit to um, that CRA role salary once you get into that senior status. And these are just other careers and research. So when I presented this to the class, I allowed them to raise their hand and pick a career that they wanted to learn more about. And I just provided a description based on my experience, what those job titles do. And so that was kind of fun because that's basically when I got them to have some type of interaction with me when we talked about the other careers. So I would suggest like maybe mid and I'll update these slides to include that, but maybe mid of your presentation have some type of knowledge check or question and answer section so they can get engaged. Again, I went to the high school students. They might not be as career oriented if you had gone to a college group or a nursing, a nursing class, because it's high school, and I think most of them in that class were juniors, so they still have even another year of high school before they think about what they want to do after they graduate. So just tailor your presentation and your words based on your audience. Also, what I'm going to add to this slide before I distribute to individuals is a list of acronyms, because there are a lot of acronyms in the clinical research aspect. And so just introducing them to those basic common acronyms, is a good leeway into clinical research. And these were just some final tips and takeaways, letting them know that there's no direct journey. So again, if they took a gap year, if they've just worked in a clinic, they can still potentially get into clinical research. They want to focus on building their resume, making sure that their resume is competitive. Apply for clinical research internships or volunteers, and understand the importance of good clinical practice, the Institutional Review Board, International Air Transport Association, IATA. Those are like the basic trainings that they need to take. Then I provided them with these links, the updated GCP, um, understanding the FDA regulations. So you're in the UK, so whichever your governing body is, as far as the Food and Drug Administration overview, you can provide them with the link to that. The good thing about good clinical practice is it's a global guidance, so that'll still be useful in your country. And city research, it was just a link of who provides these various trainings, but it might be something more commonly known in the UK for you. Just more information about various things in clinical research. And this was just the link to my dissertation, should they wanted to read it. If you have published anything, then you can put your link here so they can read it. But I can take I can, I'll probably take this slide out. It just depends. And that was me in the classroom. And then you just thank them for their participation. And then this was my social media platforms. So I just let them know if they wanted to continue to follow me, if I sparked their interest in clinical research. So you might want to have a contact page if they wanted to continue to contact you or have questions or potential guidance, if you want to provide that. After you present to your audience, then you can provide your platforms or your method of contact at uh, at the end of your presentation. And that was it. Any questions?
That was interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what I'll do is I'll if you will just send me a email address in my LinkedIn,
Okay.
then I could